Allan, hello and welcome. If you could just do a short introduction of yourself, who are you?
Yeah, my name is Allan Kirkeby, and I used to be known as Cutcreator in the Amiga Demoscene. Yeah, what else can I say? I'm a father of two sons, and I love games, and I've been working with games my entire life, and I still do old school music now and again, not so much, but yeah. That was a short introduction, I think.
Yeah. Do you remember when you got interested in computers?
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember the exact date and time, but
but was
I
there
think
something special?
yeah, I think it started with my uncle, who was the technical nerd in the family. He was like 15 years older than my father. And he used to sail on huge ships and do Morse code and stuff like that when he was younger, right? So he was technically inclined in that way. And then he started doing amateur radio calls all over the world. I think maybe these kind of people still exist where they have. No, I don't think so. But back before there was like internet and all that stuff.
Ham radio.
Yeah. So how could you create networks and so on? So he would like dial up and talk to people. And then, of course, he got a shop with TV and radio where he would repair stuff. And then once computers came around, it was kind of natural, I think, for him to be interested. Yeah. So I was a kid. I went on vacation at my uncle's place. And because I was also technically nerdy, we kind of clicked, and then he showed me the first computer he had, which I think was an old school ZX Spectrum, and that was almost just like a small pocket calculator. But he showed me how you could code your own sprite, and we made a skeleton head that moved around on the screen, and that was so cool. So yeah, that's the first time.
What now considered retro computers did you have in the past? Or non-PC or non-Apple?
Yeah. Well, I do actually consider PCs from the 90s kind of retro by now, but
yeah, sure they are, but yeah.
No, I never had a Spectrum myself, but I got the first Commodore 64 from an older friend, like a neighbor's son, and he was like almost like an older brother at one point to me. And I remember he was musically interested as well. And he had like the first like the big hi-fi stereo system that cost like a lot of back then. And he made mixtapes for me and so on. So once he got a computer, and I was already like, he was showing me cool shit you could do with music. And then I was also playing at his place, and then he sold it, and he didn't want it anymore because it wasn't as much him as it was me. So I got the chance to buy it from him. So that's what I got, a Commodore 64. And then, of course, the natural move from 64 to Amiga, because it's the same company. And that's and a very good memory about why I moved on to Amiga was one of my friends, another friend from class, was telling me, you need to come to my house and see this new computer. And I was like, yeah. And then when I came there, he had it hooked up to his stereo. And, like a real, like he was the only son. So he was a little bit spoiled. So he had like really cool hardware. And he had like, back then he had like what I would call like almost surround system set up in his room, and he had the really cool gear. And so he played it was a program called Octalizer, and he played one of the demo songs from Octalizer, and it just came out of these really good hi-fi speakers, really low bottom, really high top, and me, we were two friends there visiting, and we were both like looking at each other and like, holy shit,
Yeah.
So that's why partly that was the Amiga I got into, and also my real like opening for you can do your own music basically.
Do you still have any of these computers, or have you sold them all?
No, I don't have them. I think I don't know if I sold them. Maybe my brother inherited one of them, or it got given away to someone. I got into working with computer games through music, and very quickly that then became my music outlet, working on a PC with which sucked with MIDI and all that stuff. And then in my mind, it wasn't like Amiga wasn't cool. I mean, it's cool now, but it wasn't cool when it was outdated. Then it was like the 2 years after I stopped using it, that was like that was old shit. Now the new shit is cool. So it wasn't until afterwards I kind of realized how incredibly amazing the stuff you could do on that machine was. So
definitely. Do you use any emulators?
Yeah, that's what I do now. And I feel it almost feels a little bit dirty, like not using hardware. But I used a PT2 clone from what's he called, 8-bit.
8-bit Bubsy. Yeah. I know him.
And I was pointed in that direction at one point, and that's just, and it works on a Mac computer. And I use Mac computers because many years ago I got a job where I had to use a Mac computer, so that's why I'm there now. So this works on, and the maybe not the latest version, but not so long ago he built in sampling, which it didn't have the first version, so that's cool. So that's the one I use. I of course I use other tools for as well, but for Amiga stuff I use that. I also did an NES Family Studio I'd used at one point, just very briefly.
What made you want to create music rather than just listen? Was there something special that made you want to do your own?
I think I don't know if there was something that just made me think I would make music, but I think I'm always been a creative person, right? When I was a kid, I always wanted to. When I played role-playing games with my friends, I was always the game master, but not the game master part was cool, but also creating the world, and designing the world. And when I played Warhammer or miniature games, I always had I was creating the landscapes and building miniatures. So the creative part was also there. And so I started finding these programs. So, you could do Deluxe Paint on the Amiga. So I used that and did a lot of drawings. And so when I also did level design in the, what's it called, first shoot 'em up creator or something that was called. I remember the first one, but I guess the story about me sitting at my friend and listening to this music kind of, and at the time my ears weren't attuned. So to me, it just sounded like real, it sounded like the music that you would hear in the 80s in the radio. And it was felt like I could do some real cool stuff. So that's how I started. And sometimes, why was it that and not the graphics? And I think maybe mostly it was the fact that I became good at it. And I was very quickly could see that the music I made was compared, because I had a lot of friends that also, everyone tried to do a little bit of music. Everyone tried to do a little bit of graphics. Everyone tried. And then it just turned out that I was the one who was good at that, and then someone else was good at the other stuff. So that's kind of how it started.
How did you learn back then? What software did you start out with?
One of the ProTracker stuff. What was called Fast Tracker. What was the first one? One of those, right? And they blend. To me, they blend into each other. Because the interface is roughly the same, right? Like 4 tracks, vertical stuff. I mean, I also did some music in Octalizer, which was the one I was introduced to first. I never tried doing music on the Commodore 64, and I think part of it was I never saw a program to use for it. I don't know why I never stumbled on anything that could make music on the Commodore 64, because it's there. I've tried it since, and it's much more bothersome. When the Amiga is much more intuitive, and I think that's so that's what I used, and I had a hardware as. Of course, you use the sample discs, the ST discs and all that stuff initially, but then I got a Danish product called a sampler, an Allan sampler, and from there I started trying to sample my own stuff, and it kind of becomes this upwards going spiral where once you can do more, you get more interested, and in Denmark we have this thing where parents save up, and once you have your confirmation, what's it called in English? Like when you're 15 years old and we go to church and you get
I know what you mean. I'm just unsure about the English word.
We know what it is.
Yes.
and Denmark is we're a Christian country, but we're not really that super religious, but we still have these moments where we do this. But then it's a family get together. And the tradition is that all the family members give money to the kid, and they're saving. And I use those savings to buy a big synthesizer, like a big Korg thing.
Oh, nice.
So that's that. You asked about software, but I guess that's was my setup, and that's when I really started doing stuff. And I've done stuff for Static Bytes, demo group Static Bytes, and we did the Euro charts, and I think already by that time I did have that synthesizer. So most of the music I've done was using that, and I think that creative process just worked very well for me.
Mm-hmm. Were there any musicians you looked up to at the time?
Yeah. I mean, the friend I mentioned before that I met, where we went to this third friend, but that friend, the first friend, was called Klaus, and he also joined the Demoscene. He was called Dice, and he was part of the Polka Brothers, and initially Upfront, I remember sitting at his basement. You probably have the same kind of experience back then, where you start getting these discs. Initially you got discs. I remember, there was this guy in town, you can buy computer games from him, and then you would go and get some piracy copy stuff, and they cost like 20 kroners per disc or something like that. I don't know how, but at one point we got some discs that weren't games, and we got demos on them, and we were like, what's and you put them in, you also see the intros, of course, but then you put them in and you go like, oh, that's cool. And then we started reading the scroll, and we kind of started realizing there's something here. Yeah. And so I was sitting in his basement, and we had seen some of this, and he was really into one of the Upfront Plastic Passion demos or something. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was also one of the first, of course, at the time there was Jesper Kyd, but I remember a music disc from Maestro. He sadly passed away since, but a guy from Kefrens, and we also got the Kefrens Mega Demo and those things. But I remember that disc was something we were both like, oh, that is amazing. His first music disc, and but all the greats I'm a fan of. I guess Heatbeat, if I have to choose one, that's where I'm impressed, and I think it's original compositions and so on, and cool. Every time you heard something from Heatbeat, it was just like, that's cool. That sounds like something that shouldn't be possible on the Amiga, and so that was cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved with the Demoscene? How did you join a group? Who invited you?
Well, that's actually like the continuation of what I just started telling about. We were sitting, so me and Dice, or Klaus was his real name. We were like, fanboys, and sitting there and thinking big, and dreaming about doing that like you do. And then was like, oh, maybe we could join a group, and we look at each, oh, cool. and I don't know, we ended up joining different groups, and we were talking about which group could be cool to join. And he was very, I don't know, but I just remember he was like upfront. And they were like, how do we join them? What can we do? And so we were just like, what do we have? Oh, send a letter. That's what you did back then. And so I saw something from Static Bytes, and I can't remember what it actually was that made me want to. No, that wasn't it actually. There was the first group was called Ascension, and that was like 2 kids, I think maybe almost younger than me, and we were young. And then I joined them, and Klaus was trying to get into Upfront, and they were happy to have me, and we went to a Dexian party at Christmas somewhere in the, I don't know, 90s. That was my first demo party. So I think I just sent a letter saying, like a post letter writing.
Yeah.
I mean, I say it like that because my day job now is I also teach, at an academy. So I work with people that are much younger, and sometimes I kind of have to spell out and explain that's what the world was like back then.
What did the demo scene feel like in those days?
It felt I almost said like magical and cool, but it also was like a little bit like amateurish and I'm a nerd. I'm also one of the well-functioning nerds. So I've been able to have a career with where I had to be social and all that stuff. But I've also joined a lot of nerd communities, and I love those communities where everyone is just so focused on the thing we do together. I mean, whether it's magic cards or it's skateboarding or something, where it's that thing is what joins us together, and it doesn't matter what you look like and how you do it and so on. And even if you're not the best, you're still welcome to be there. Exactly. And I think that's the demo scene was maybe also skateboarding a little bit, but that's different because that was just me and the 2 guys locally, right? So this is the first time I met people from other countries. So it was very, of course, not the very first part of the demo scene, but as you kind of go into the demo scene, you kind of realize there's all these cool people and they do cool shit. So it was inspiring as well, because it was the first time where I was doing something cool and I could meet other people that were doing stuff that I think was cooler. And then I could get inspired. But then they would, I mean, of course, there was a little bit of some part of the demo scene had the competitive side, and some people had a little bit of elbows and wanted to be the best. But I fortunately I never really experienced any of this in a really bad way. Of course, I joined competitions where it didn't win, and that was annoying. But I just overall experienced it as a place where everyone was kind of encouraging each other to do cool shit, and also having competition. And I love those kind of communities, and I think that kind of also became a template for the kind of communities that I have joined since, or that I love to be part of. Where you do creative stuff for yourself, but also together, and you invite others to be part of it. And then, but there's also a competitive element, and I think that's. Did it feel like maybe I'm remembering it as I want to remember it, and not like it actually was?
Perhaps.
And of course, there was also when I just joined. I remember, the age gap feels bigger when you're younger, and I guess maybe I was 19 or something. And so when you meet someone who's 23, it feels like, oh, that's a grown up, right? And I don't know maybe Jesper Kyd was not that much older, or Maestro, or some of those that I looked up to. But I remember at this Dexian party, when you come there and it's your first party, you just feel like a small boy, and everything is big and crazy. And I remember walking the halls, and some of these guys, I recognized their faces, or someone said, "Oh, this is the guy who did this music," and you would go like, "Wow, that's cool," right? So it was also kind of for me meeting heroes, and then very quickly realizing that they're just most of them nice guys.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Why do you think people still love tracking music today?
That is a really good question, because some of it sounds like shit. No, so the thing is, I also, even though I didn't use the Commodore 64, I have another friend who we very enthusiastic about everything Amiga, but also Commodore 64. And I remember a piece of music on, Rob Hubbard was one of the greats on the Commodore 64. And he did a piece of music for a game called Nemesis the Warlock. And but lots of other music. And I remember we recorded something on tape. And this was before we knew about the cable. So I remember the first time we just put, the boombox things, it could record, so we just put it in front of a speaker and had it record, and then we had a mixtape with Commodore 64 music, and we would listen to it, and then maybe 10 years ago or whatever, like much later, we found out that all of this music was available on these players, especially the Commodore 64 music, because it doesn't fill any megabytes or anything. It's just, and we would pick it up, and then sometimes we would just hang out and have the music running in the background. And I remember, so I know your question was about. I'm going on.
Just speak. That's fine. Just speak.
And then, we had his girlfriend and some of our friends, and we would sometimes listen to it while they would be around, because there was like a barbecue party, and then during the we were like, oh, we just need to listen to a little bit of this, and then they would just like look at us like we were insane. I mean, because to them it's just like, And so why do people enjoy it? I think, especially the Commodore 64, it's very much an acquired taste. And I guess, where are you from? You're from Norway, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the Nordics, I don't know Norway, but I know at least Sweden and Denmark, we have licorice, right? And salty licorice, and the rest of the world hates it. And it's the same. It's maybe an acquired taste where I can't go without. I mean, I would want it regularly, right? So I think that's part of it, because it was a big part of it meant a lot to me, and the relationships I built back then, and it's friends I still have. Our friendships were not just based on this, but a lot of this music was played around the time. Then for the Amiga music, I think some of it sounds a lot better, right? Because of the sampling, but a lot of the Amiga music, also the stuff I did, it's dated because it sounds like the 80s. It doesn't even sound like. I mean, there's modern Amiga music that sounds more modern, but the style was different. So I think a lot of it is nostalgia, and I've met very few people that did not. I've met very few young people that fall into this. So that's why I think it's nostalgia, but an acquired taste. It doesn't mean that I don't. That I it's only nostalgia for me. It's actually, I love listening to it, and it's. I don't know. I can imagine if you grew up with strange folk music that no one else listens to, it's still important to you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of akin to this kind of Imagine a folk music tradition. It's just digital, and it's just our clan of people or something.
Yeah. I have met a few teenagers that likes the music and even have started using trackers. So yeah, there's probably an acquired taste.
Yeah, I do think that that's a good point. But I also think there is a generation of indie games that started that started having this, what we don't call it old school, we just, the term is just chip music, or maybe that's our term, I don't know. So I actually, at one point I was playing a game with pixel art. It was a multiplayer game, and my sons were, my two sons are like 19 and 22. I hope I remember correctly now.
Yeah.
But of course, when they were younger, they weren't that articulate about what they liked in life. They were just like, "Oh, Dad, that's cool," and so on. But we were playing this game, and then I was like, let's play this game." And I was almost apologizing in advance because it didn't look like Call of Duty. To me, it looked old school.
Yeah.
And then we played a few games, and then a couple of years passed, and then at one point, one of my sons said to me, and I think this is very telling, and I've heard it since as well from others, "Dad, why do you keep saying old school? It's just cool graphics. It's just a genre."
Yeah.
And because they don't know that it existed like 30 years ago.
Exactly.
To them, it's just a new genre, and the type of music. If you have like chip tune style music in some of those games, and I think that's what's happening with the new generation, is that, or a new generation of people that are starting to enjoy it. They enjoy it because it's a type of genre and experience that separates it from, let's say, the AAA games or the other experiences.
Yeah.
So of course that for them it's not connected with being creative or a scene of people that are creative together. So in that sense, it's slightly different. But I don't know if I love to have more people join this. I mean, it could be cool to have a revival of a just Demoscene like thing on old school stuff, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you have made a few Nintendo tracks or NES tracks for a project your boss is working on. Can you tell me something about the project?
Yeah, I know it's out there somewhere. I just don't know what the link is. But so I work at Dania Academy, which is like a applied sciences school, and our campus. We're big of a larger campus across the local region, but our campus in the town, we teach computer game stuff. So we have a programming course degree you can take, and we have a design degree. So all the people employed there are nerds in some way, and my immediate boss is also very old school nerdy. He likes to not so much Amiga Demoscene, but more like fiddling also with the hardware and finding old cartridges that don't work, and then he opens them and he repairs them, like soldering and stuff. And then he was like trying to build his own game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and he wanted to make it as original as possible. And I said, I can't. And he was needing the music, so he knew I did the music. So he was asking, "Hey, do you think you could do something?" I said, I can't compose on original hardware. I don't know. No, that's fine. That was okay, even though he wanted to keep it original. But so I found this emulator, and so then I tried to, that was an experience. That was almost like diving into a new tool. I think the game he did was he actually built like a fake, you remember the old arcade machines that you would have like in the grill bar and stuff like that? Have like, and so he built like a cabinet that is now sitting at the school campus area, And then he built in, of course, it's based on a PC, so everything's emulated. But he built like a menu selector, so you could select all kind of old school games. Some of them he did, and one of them was this game, and I think it was like a decathlon kind of running, jumping kind of game with pixel art, and I just did the music. I gave it to him, and then I didn't hear about it for 3 or 4 months, and suddenly it was like, oh, it's there. Actually, I did it at something. I visited at the point a place called Spelkollektivet in Sweden, which is like a group of people out in the middle of nowhere who have created this commune or collective. They live in the same place, and it's about 40 people, and they make games. And I remember visiting, and it was very cool because it almost felt like a demo party, like a full-time demo party. I could probably look it up, Spelkollektivet.se or something. Of course, they don't make demo stuff, but it had the same feel of a group. Vibe. A group of creative people, and they did a game jam. And of course, game jams are a little bit akin to like demo parties, especially those where you have to code and build demos at the same time. And while I was there, that was when I composed this music along with some other music as well. So I just spent a week, actually 2 weeks, just diving into and being fully creative again.
Do you have any memorable stories from parties or competition? Something that stands out?
Maybe no, not a little bit boring. I guess some of the stories I have are not from the big parties. I mean, we did some small parties with the polka. Some of those that became the Polka Brothers group, and Kefren's people. You know, all the Danish that part of the. And I still sometimes talk to those people, but we had some mini get-togethers that weren't really demo parties, and some of those were just like, yes, we used their computers, but some of those were also just us being nerdy, stupid guys. I remember one point we got permission to use the local kindergarten building or something because someone's mother worked there, or, you know. So we were like, I guess we were like 25, 30 people getting together. And that was, I did a music disc called Kuglepøllen, which is basically like a ball pool. And that title came from there because we were just jumping in that. And I remember by the end, the ball pool was empty and the balls were all over the place, even at the playground, out on the street and so on. And I don't actually remember doing a lot of computer stuff at those parties. I remember we had beers and partied a lot and did silly stuff. I mean, there were what else? I remember a really weird, slightly scary party somewhere in Denmark where they had hired some people that had like Nazi signs as bouncers or something. That was strange, and I'm not even sure the organizers knew it would be like that. I mean, it's no, I don't have like big situations. I mean, of course, I remember certain demos that were shown for the first time, like Global Trash being shown at the demo the party, you know, and going like, what the hell, you know? So lots of those kinds of memories. My first party, I remember my father coming to pick me up. We had been there. We hadn't really slept because I forgot my sleeping bag. And it was in the winter. It was like the Dexian party in the 90s or something. And I didn't know what to go. So for some reason, I had forgotten sleeping equipment. So when I was sleepy, I was just like, there's a floor. And I went, and it was at a school. So it's like this hard stone floor.
I know exactly what you mean.
And then lying there and not, the hard floor, but also it was cold because it was winter outside, and these schools, the isolation was not always so on the floor, and cold air goes down. So I was just miserable and cold by the third or fourth day at the party. And then my dad came to pick us up, and then I can remember another guy got a lift, and then I remember just falling asleep in the car, like sitting like this and drooling all over my lap because I couldn't stay awake, and I hadn't slept the entire party. So there's a lot of other memories, I'm sure, but they feel strange to talk about because it's nothing spectacular. It's
but still they're fond memories.
Great stuff.
Are you still active in the demo scene today?
I guess no, not in the same sense. I don't participate. I don't join parties. It's not that I don't want to, or if there was a party tomorrow next door, I would go and check it out. But it's I know you probably go to some of the parties as well, and
I'm not so much anymore.
No.
And
I got back into it with, I guess, the Cutcreator series of music discs.
Yeah,
I can't remember, was it Slash or someone who contacted me and asked?
It was probably Slash.
So that's kind of how you could say, started being a little bit more involved again. But it's not the same as it was back then, where when you were part of a group. I know we were remote, but we often met very often and barbecued and stuff. So I'm not involved in that way, but I do enjoy following along. I do enjoy watching new demos. I'm really amazed by some of the 1K stuff or stuff where you just go like, oh, they can do that now, vector stuff on the Commodore 64. So in that sense, and I still do music, as you know.
I know. Yeah. Okay, then we are done with the demo scene stuff for now, at least. Games. You started out doing tracker music and later moved into game design, production, and development leadership. How did that transition happen?
That's a long story. I guess I can try and make it short. So I was doing music, of course, tracker music, and you I don't know if you remember, but for me there was a period of time in my Demoscene years where we got a little bit older, and especially some of the Danish guys from Kefrens and Polka Brothers and some of those groups started, thinking about could we get paid, or there was these opportunities opening for doing games. And these people, especially the programmers, had these technical skills to think about vectors and early stage shaders and stuff like that. And obviously that was very attractive. So I remember the Norwegian company Funcom was basically mostly demo sceners, and I don't think that was as easy for musicians. It wasn't like there was of course most game companies had 20 programmer jobs but only one musician job. So it wasn't as natural. But then I was doing this music, it was just a hobby, and then we had one of our graphic artists called Sauron. That was his handle, and I can't remember his real name. He might actually have been Norwegian or Swedish. Anyway, he got a job at a Danish company relatively close to where I lived at the time, in a city called Silkeborg, and I had never heard about them. And then at one point he contacted me and he said, hey, I just overheard the boss talking about looking for a way to do music. And is it okay if would you like to? And that's how I kind of joined that. I got a few thousand kroners for some of the first music, and I was ecstatic, and that was so cool, that was a lot of money for me back then because I didn't make money in any way. So to make a long story short, that kind of got a foot in the door, so to speak. And then, a fun story about how I transitioned into production and management. Well, of course, over time, I then started dabbling in graphics as well and game design because I just volunteered to do this stuff. I didn't have an education. I was just like, someone needs to write the mission text. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. But, and I guess this is very interesting because I teach the next generation now. And to me, it was just what we did in the Demoscene. You didn't have to have pre-qualifications to be able to do something. We all kind of accepted and recognized that if someone said, I'll try it, they would just be allowed to do it. Of course, we would then judge each other on how good you were at it.
Yeah,
but there was always the opportunity, and it kind of all of us were seeded with this thing where just try it. Just fucking try it, and it will be cool. And if you try, and you will learn, and then you will be better. And I think that I didn't think about it at the time, but I think that's kind of how a lot of the young game development studios were built. Was basically these kind of people that were coming from this generation of computer nerds that were just like, yeah, no one had to tell me, I just tried it. And so that's basically also how I one day overheard a complaint from the management or from the boss about, oh, we're not hitting the deadlines and we may not be able to pay the salaries.
Ooh.
And I was young and I had just moved away from home, so I could just move back home. I didn't care. Yeah. I didn't have, but still, I was like asking one of the programmers who had been there for longer. I was like, okay, so I just heard that, and he was talking about let's do 3 games in 3 months because that's the solution. And everyone was just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So I was just asking them why what then? Why are we not hitting there? Okay, so what do you know? How do you know what you need to do? Oh, it's in my head. Have you talked to the others? Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so what do you need to do? And it just struck me, why don't we write it down? And I didn't have any. So it just from pure logical deduction, I was like, maybe make a list of all the things we need to do and then try and figure out how long will all of this take to do. I mean, it just seems logical, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to the boss and told him that, hey, we can't do 3 games in 3 months, but maybe if we structure it, it's actually possible to have one of those games finished in 6 months. And he was like, but we don't have money for it. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't help to just say 3 months, 3 games in 3 months. That's not going to give us salary. And I don't know how that kind of all worked out, but of course, I got started managing that one game. And at one point, he was like, oh, that's actually going quite well. Do you want to manage the other games?
Exactly.
So I just kind of moved away from the creative stuff. And initially, I didn't mind because to me, it wasn't like I was moving away. It was like I was moving into something that was also interesting and exciting. So that's how I got started with that. And, then I got kind of second in command in terms of the production side of the company. And we never did like very famous games, but we did a lot of what you would call mid quality or budget games. And we did like 40 games. We did stuff for PlayStation 2 and PC and stuff, Game Boy Advance, stuff like that. And then about 2007, I joined Unity, the company that's now well known for doing the engine. But back then, it was just a couple of guys, and it felt actually very much like a community of Demosceners, which a lot of startup companies feel like, these bunch of nerds trying to do something cool. So that transition then made me turn into a manager initially of that department, and then later on a CEO of that branch of the company. So I guess the management side was also because I just happened to be good at it, and a little bit like the Demoscene, I ended up doing it because I was the best one, which which
exactly.
which and you know, it's not. Sometimes you think everyone wants to be the boss, but that's actually not the case.
No, that's not the case.
Most people just want to sit and do the stuff they think is cool and what they're good at. Right?
And they don't want all the headaches that comes with being the boss.
Yeah. And initially you don't know there are headaches to be involved, but
but you will learn pretty quickly.
Exactly.
But you showed initiative, and it was clearly something that suited you as a person.
Yeah. Of course, now I know I'm no longer a CEO or a manager of that, but I still kind of have that thing where if there's something interesting or exciting, or my brain is maybe it's not looking, but my brain is kind of seeing someone is saying something, and I can read in between the lines something that needs to be solved, and I can kind of move there, and try and find this and I'm not afraid of just trying something out, because I've not gone to university. I don't have that kind of, and sometimes I think that if you go to university and if you don't have this creative group of background that we have, then maybe you've been taught to follow strict patterns, or you've been told that this is the right way to do it, and that is a risk of making you less flexible in terms of finding a better way to do it. That's maybe not the one. And I think that is one of the things that I'm think most of the people I know from the demo scene have this ability, even in their jobs today. You know, most of them are like our age, right? So that's pretty cool.
On early projects like Naughty Ones, you worked on the music. What was the process of composing for a game compared to a demo?
That's actually quite interesting. I think it's one of those things, like we talked about the headaches of being a manager. You don't know them until you hit them the first time. Exactly. And then you kind of have to adjust and figure out, was this actually for me? Do I still want to be in this position if I have? And I guess it's the same transitioning from hobby musician, where I remember going to school, and my brain would, all day at school, even doing math class or whatever, my brain would be thinking about what I would do when I would come home.
Yeah.
And when I came home, it was just almost like before I even got my backpack off, I would just turn on the Amiga and do stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that drive, it's a completely different drive when you have to do it as a job. Because sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we need 2 pieces of music on Friday, and then okay, the game is like this, and it has to be this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of, initially it's just, oh cool, I'll do it, and then you also realize that people are a little bit more critical, but also for a good reason, because it's a product that has a different purpose than a demo, where of course people in the demo scene can tell you, oh, that's shit.
Yeah.
And then they just don't want to use your music.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because it's not supposed to. But if you're the only musician assigned to a game, it's not like, oh yeah, we'll just not use it, we'll just do something else. That's not it's just, if it's not the right thing, you have to do a different thing, and you have to do a different thing.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this it becomes this job where you have to do it. So I think that was a hard lesson, taking your hobby to make it into a duty almost, an obligation.
Yeah.
And I've done it quite well. I'm quite good at it. But it also meant that I gradually stopped doing my own music. And I think that's a story you can hear from a lot of people that transition into that. Wow. And then, of course, much later, you kind of realize that you can do both the professional stuff, and then you can find a way to detach yourself from that, and in your free time still find the joy in just doing. But then it becomes weird shit you do in your free time, because you have to do the structured stuff at work, and in your free time you want to be able to experiment, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. You seem to have done a lot: music, sound effects, design, art, and production. Which role felt most natural to you, and which one was the most challenging?
That's a good question. So when you ask it like that, do you mean like for a job?
Yeah.
Because
for a job.
Because one thing I realized is we don't know, we never know how difficult or easy other people have at doing things, and we always compare each other. As that's one thing I also learned from the demo scene, is that you always compare, which maybe one of the few bad things is that if you compare too much, you get imposter syndrome and you don't feel good enough or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've always been naturally inclined and good at doing music without even, but I don't think I'm a musician. So.
Oh, but you are.
Yeah, but it's this thing where it's very easy to find that imposter syndrome. But it also comes very naturally to me to do it. Whereas with management or leading a team, I guess maybe because it's okay as a musician and a sound designer or whatever you call it, you're the only one in most small game companies. There's only one person.
Yeah.
And that means you don't have anyone doing the same craft area, the skill area as you. So you don't have anyone to spar with. And I've actually, when I had employees, I've actually heard that from employees as well, that this was a graphic artist, but he was the only one who was like the top level 3D artist. And one of his frustrations was, I'm looking for someone to be inspired by. I understand my role in the company is to be the art director or the lead person. And I know that I'm inspiring others. But sometimes I go to work and I just miss someone to be inspired by. And of course, being a team leader is also a little bit lonely in that sense. But at least, especially the kind of teams that I prefer, the way that I prefer to lead teams is to be more like a servant leader, where I'm not supposed to be your boss. I'm not a dictator, but I'm the one making sure I will sit and fix the schedule. We will talk about how to solve the design issues, but you will also tell me what you need to do and so on. And we work together around it, right? So at least there you have the collaboration part. So professionally, I think that was easier for me to be in. It was also the easiest one to find and to keep a good salary.
Yeah.
I guess. But then over time, I of course graduated or moved, as you often do. You get promoted, and you don't think about the consequences. And as we talked about earlier, there's also tough things. And suddenly, at one point, you the first time you sit in a situation where you have to fire someone, that is a new thing, and that's an unpleasant situation.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you know the person. So I think once I started doing that and I became a CEO, and suddenly you get moved further and further away from the creative part of a company like that, a group of people like that. Even though it was a game company, I wasn't doing games anymore. No. I was sitting there with the spreadsheets. I was having meetings with the board of directors. I would have regular meetings with the bank and the accountant. Of course, business meetings and strategic meetings with. Some of that is very interesting, but I think, and I tried to compensate in my spare time with being creative or stuff. So I think I feel best with sitting in a position where I'm part of the creative team or part of building a product in one way or the other. Yeah. It can be as a coordinator, or it can be as part of the team.
Yeah. Did you ever work on a game that was cancelled so late in development that it felt strange to simply walk away from it?
I worked on a lot of games. I worked on some games that were cancelled, and maybe my experience is going to be different from others, because I've mostly worked on games, if you look at my entire career, where I was the one deciding if it had to be cancelled. So from 19, let's say from 1997, I became the project manager. And of course, this was a small company, so the boss was the next in command, the owner. So I was always involved in discussions where the discussion was about, oh, we don't have budget for this or something. So I also knew the reasoning behind canceling. But I have, so for me, I'm not, most of the stories and most of the games industry, is people who are not in charge of when a game is. Most people are either programmers or designers or seniors or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've always been in these mid-sized companies, and then when I joined Unity, I was the team lead and later on the CEO and hiring people. So, from my point of view, I don't think I felt it as frustrating as some of the team members who didn't have the full picture of why it happened. I do remember one game though where we were doing a PlayStation 2 game, and to be fair, we weren't very good at it at this particular game, and it got canceled. It was based on a German TV show somewhere, and it didn't really get canceled. It just got finished, and then almost like, oh, we have it, let's put it out there and then forget about it. Yeah. And that almost felt worse than having to give up on a project. I think most of all, I've actually been part of finishing and launching projects that we should probably have canceled. And I guess that's when you work in a small struggling company, sometimes that's the desperate measure. And my first many years as a manager, project lead, or producer, I didn't have any experience, so I didn't know better. But as you kind of experience, and sometimes you realize that we have this sunk cost fallacy. We've already worked on this for 1.5 years. But maybe we're kind of realizing that no publisher, we couldn't find the right publisher, or when we find someone, they just put it on the shelf or whatever. Maybe we should just have moved on. But that is almost impossible to choose, right? It's there's a lot of games, and also, to be honest, I've been involved with games where, as a producer, I would hardly say that I was part of making them. I was more like giving the contract to the team or something.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite game you have been involved with?
Famous game?
No, favorite.
Favorite game. Okay, so nostalgia, and the first game one of the first games where I was so much involved and so much in charge that I actually started feeling it was my game. Was a helicopter simulator called Search and Rescue. And it was just such an amateurish production because none of us had that much experience. But we were also then just all in. I remember at one point we were late, we had crunch, and the programmer was a high school student. And I had just graduated. But then the programmer had planned to go on a trip around the world with his girlfriend. And so what was the pressure? What was the deadline pressure? The deadline pressure, he would be gone. I mean, he would just leave. And then we needed to finish. And I remember the last 3 months or something, we just slept under the table at the office. And one of the funny stories was, so this was a 90s somewhere, late 90s, like just around 2000 maybe. And we had a CD with music, but it was the only CD. And we didn't have a car. And the office was far away from where we lived, so we couldn't just walk home so it didn't make sense. Which also meant that we didn't have money because salary was tight and the budget, and it was like very amateurish. But we were so dedicated to this game, and this one CD with one band was the only music we had. and it was, so we just heard it like 200 times.
Yeah.
And I just remember, I was just a silly story, right? But and I was then, because we were the only two people at the office sometimes, and was like a bug in one of the missions, so I had to fix the mission script, and he was doing the code, and we were doing music and sound. So I was basically, we were doing hands-on with everything. And so that game has a special place in my heart. It was called Search and Rescue 2, and it was like a rescue helicopter game. I remember many, it wasn't very good looking, it wasn't like famous, but I also did the music for it. And not so long ago, I got a request via my SoundCloud account for people asking, hey, were you, because I had posted something, and do you know if the music for this game is still around? And I was like, I had not thought about it. And I found an old disc, and I grabbed it, converted it to WAV files, and put some of it up there. And they were just so oh, finally I found this music. I remember it from when I was 12 years old, and my dad had the game, and I played it. So many things from that game that kind of, it was part of launching my career. It was the first time I was so deeply involved. Is that the best game, or in terms of favorite? No, but it was my favorite memory, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I mean, another big thing was also, it's like multiple things coming into play. It was in the early days of Unity, where we were working with Cartoon Networks, I think. And they were building an MMO based on their franchises, the Ben 10 franchise. And they were actually using a Korean development studio. And the game was a little bit like a light version of World of Warcraft, the gameplay, but it was just like you could meet all the characters from the Ben 10 and all the Cartoon Networks. And they wanted to put it in a web browser, and at that time Unity was the first thing I could do that. So we got hired to work with the Korean team, and we went to Korea. I was part of some heavy contract negotiation stuff, which is not very creative, but all of that stuff kind of worked out, and we got involved with it, and the team and the Unity tech team. And Unity was like, that's one of the projects that made Unity kind of do like a quantum leap forwards in terms of technological, went from 64, it went from what, 32 to 64-bit or whatever. There was a lot of stuff, like the build pipeline stuff and the collaboration with a fairly big production. And then, of course, the game is no longer live. It wasn't, once it launched, it wasn't like a huge success, but that's how it is. But I just remember the whole process was so cool. And that was like a big monumental change that happened. So that was kind of cool.
Since 2017, you've spent time designing board games. What pulled you into that world?
I guess initially my sons, because I don't know, like nerdy dad, I wanted to do stuff with my sons. And basically, to be honest, I loved small kids, but my part of my brain that wants to do stuff with them that I think is cool. Most of the stuff I think is cool, you can't do with a 3-year-old.
No, no.
So very early on, I was like, what can I come up? I want to play some games with them. And kids games are mostly silly. So I wanted to kind of make a dungeon crawl game where you could play with my kids. So that's where the started, 2010 or something.
Oh yeah, all the way back down.
And then so I started doing that, and it was just a hobby, and it went on for 6 years, like just a hobby project. And it's like one of those games where then I had on Halloween or whatever it's called, a Fastelavn, we call it in Denmark as well, where where you dress up the kids, and then my kid, I would dress up my kids. They would get like a rubber sword and a shield, and I would take a photo, and then I would create small like board game pieces with actually images of my kids, and they thought that was cool. And then I would have other images of goblins and orcs, and they would move on a board, and we would fight them, and that was fun. But then I got involved with a network in Denmark, and I guess it was some part of what attracted me to this group of creative people that also made games. Was it kind of reminded me of the Demoscene, because some people were very much into doing the graphic side, and some of them were very much into the terminology, and there wasn't programming, but there were still people that were more into what we call the mechanics of the games. And then we would meet up and show each other the prototypes or early stage demos, just like we would do in the Demoscene. And so that felt really cool, finding this community of creative people. And so that's kind of how it stuck with me. And I got inspired to do more games and so on.
When you start designing a board game, what usually comes first? Mechanics, themes, story, or just a random idea?
I think for me, it's mostly mechanics first, but that has changed over time. A little bit with also my music. With the music, originally it was like, sitting there and scrolling through sounds and just going like pling, 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 pling. Oh, that sound is good, and then you do something with it, right? So it started with the sound, but then as you do more and more, you start learning more and changing perspectives. So then with the music, I started thinking about atmosphere. What kind of atmosphere would I like? And then I would try and recreate that. So with the games as well, it started with mechanics, and that's still my go-to thing, where I'm like, oh, I do want to do something with cards, and I want to do something with combo systems where if I play this card and this card, they can work together. Or I would do something with dice, like a Yahtzee mechanic or something like that. But then over time, I kind of moved into, well, maybe I want to do a game that feels scary. And so it's an evolving process, but I guess it's mechanics first.
Can you list some of the board games you have worked on, and is there one you would recommend people buy?
Yes, there's actually one that's coming out right now. It's super expensive because it's a very big game, and it's because it's the newest one. So I've done a lot of board games, but I only have 2 of them that are published. One is called Itchy Monkey, and that's from 2018. And I don't think you can get it anymore. And the newest one is called Revenant. It's coming out with a publisher called Mind Clash Games, and they are very famous for doing big Kickstarter projects and doing very heavy games. So, and I remember talking to them, and they even considered my game one of their smaller games compared to some of the games they do. But it takes about the first time you play my game Revenant, it will take you 3 or 4 hours to play, maybe more. But it's a game I worked on quite a long time, and then when I pitched it, showed it to the publisher, and they sent me. I got a contract with them. I did a lot of work with them, and they found a really nice graphic artist, and they did a lot of work with 3D models, adding like spaceship 3D models. So the game is basically about a fleet of ships that needs to defend itself from attacking enemies that are called Voidborn. And you are trying as a captain. Every player has their own ship in the fleet, and you're trying to defend the fleet, but you're also trying to make yourself the most recognized captain against the other players. So even though everyone's trying to protect the fleet, you're still trying to get a leg up on the others. And then it's complicated where you can upgrade your ship with cards, you can upgrade your crew, you can go to planets and so on. So tons of stuff you can do. But yeah, it's called Revenant, and it's right now the factory production has just finished. The Kickstarter was in late 2024. And it's not it's been a long time underway, and also all the Trump stuff with tariffs was delayed it a little bit. But now it's coming out. The first people in Australia have received their copies, and I think later this year, maybe in August, September, it will start to be available in board game shops, or at least online via web purchases.
Okay, great. Okay, we now have come to the end section. You have also dove into teaching. Can you tell us a bit about how that came about and what you teach the youngsters?
Yeah, youngsters. So when I in 2017, I had been running Unity Studios for a while, and we had a year that was really tough, and I had then worked very hard to save it. It took a toll on my marriage, and I also got divorced around the time. So there was I kind of made a change in my life. I kind of eventually decided not to be to get out of that job and do something else. So it's kind of a fresh start. So I was looking for something to do, and I saw this advert for someone. They were teaching game stuff, and I thought, I can do that. I don't know what to do, but I can do that. It was basically a part-time job initially. I can do that for a year, maybe. And now I've been there since 2017, full-time since 2018. And it's basically a campus where the only educations we have are game related, so we try and make that. But I was actually not hired as an educator initially. I was hired to help build what's called an incubator, which is kind of a place where you can sit and build your first company. And I know I used the term company, and that's kind of important because that's the difference between a demo group and a company, is that it's business focused and it has to make money. But the very early stage, it basically feels like a demo group.
Yeah.
So it's basically like a group of typically nerds, and it's still very male dominated. Fortunately, we're seeing a lot more women come into this. But it's a group of guys just sitting together and trying to do something that's really cool, and they want to impress the world.
Yeah.
So then I'm helping them learn how to work together to solve conflicts and try and design a game. And then I'm also trying gradually over time, over their course of their journey, I'm gradually trying to embed business mindset and how to make a product that people will eventually buy. So that's how I started. And then because I've been there for so many years, I've also gradually been involved with various courses. I also run in one of the courses I run now is a game design course. It's one thing I've not really done is teach music creation. That might be something, but
that should be something.
Yeah, but I think it's because we don't have we don't have a course or a line where we teach music. So we don't have that many students that focus on that. But I recently started collaborating with a place in Denmark called Sonic College. It's in a different town, and they do some really cool. They only focus on sound and music for digital stuff or creative things or games. So yeah.
Great. You mentioned a few times that you used to be the CEO of Unity. How in the world did you get that job?
A little bit like I mentioned, becoming a project manager, basically discovering. Not exactly. No. Okay. The real story. It was basically volunteering, but it's the anecdote is basically I was working as an executive producer in this company called Interactivision. That was the company I did the helicopter game with, and lots of other games, Game Boy Advance and so on.
Yeah.
And we were a Danish company, but we had departments in a lot of other countries. We had 2 studios in Poland, And at the time, bluntly speaking, they had lower salaries, so that's still how it is today. You have production studios, but the company was struggling at the time, partly for many reasons, but partly because we were doing a lot of CD-ROM stuff. And just around 2017, the market changed and CD-ROM internet was coming in and so on. I was also starting to do like talks, being invited to the University of Aalborg at one point. And then, it was like mini conference, and I was doing a talk about what game production was like. And then there was this young guy called David Helgeson, who's now or was the CEO at Unity Technologies at one point. He was one of the founders, among the 3 founders, right? And he was up there talking about how to do a game engine.
Yeah.
And I had never met the guy. So we met and we talked, and that's cool. And I think he was like surprised that there was someone else from Denmark who he had never heard about, who was so forthcoming, but maybe also so fairly experienced as I was, because we were basically anonymous. It's not like in the internet, you couldn't just find all the game companies in Denmark as you can today. But back then it was like, and we were not in Copenhagen and he was in Copenhagen. So if you were in Copenhagen, you knew what's going on in Copenhagen, but you didn't know what else. So we met. And then when and there was another guy there as well. And then for some reason, I stopped working for my company and it went bankrupt eventually. And the other guy was called Lars. His company went bankrupt. And then David reached out to us and said, hey, we can't find people to work with in Copenhagen. Would you like to join? Because it just sounds like there's a lot of experienced game people and nerds in your region, and your company's just went bankrupt. And then I was like, yeah, so that's how I joined. And it was because I was the natural experienced leader. That was the choice, basically. We actually had a discussion. Who should take this role at that? It's basically like a demo group where it's like, oh yeah, I will then be called the swapper,
Yeah.
No, then I should be. We would basically like very like deciding who should be what. And then I was like, yeah, sure. I have done the most contract negotiation, whatever. So it felt natural I would do that. And so once you're in that position and the company grows, eventually and it had to be created as a separate business entity, where before I was just employed basically at Unity Technologies as employee number, 13 or something. And then I got into that and I was employing and hiring people and so on. So once we created a separate business unit, someone had to be the CEO, and I took that role. And then from there, I started building the company and building the strategy more and more separately from the core technology part of Unity. And so it kind of evolved into fully running the company myself.
Okay, over to something completely different. Do you think the internet has changed creativity for the better or worse?
The internet for the better.
Yeah.
But then the internet is constantly evolving, and today you might talk about AI or stuff like that, which is...
Yeah, that would be my next question. What are your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, so I think for me, the internet, so creativity, it relies very often on being inspired or having triggers or seeing things that make you want to strive or do stuff. And I think that's one of the great things the internet can do. There's obviously, as I talked about a little bit before, the imposter syndrome, which can be the killer of creativity, or, what makes you want to go home and do stuff is because you want to do something. But what is it that make you have a writer's block? That can be so many things. But it can sometimes be this thing that you see everyone else is doing stuff that feels better or better. And if you start focusing too much on that, and obviously the internet facilitates that, you can sometimes fall into that. So there are parts of the internet that are complicated and not so good, and especially doom scrolling and just looking at stuff. I don't think it's the internet's fault, if you could call it that, but it does require you to have some self-discipline to use the internet in the right way. And about the AI, it's such a complicated thing. You can fall into different categories. I'm optimistic. I think I use AI for certain things. For example, I don't consider myself a good writer. I think I'm an okay writer, but it's also not something. I know people that, when I make music, it just feels like it flows.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't feel like it flows when I write stuff. It feels like I have to work at it.
Yeah.
And concentrate. And I think that's the difference, often the difference between why you become good at some things and other things you're not good at. It's not that you can't become good, but it's just that it's more fun and easy to do. Yeah. And I think for me, having stuff like ChatGPT makes writing easier because I can get to the result and feel good about it and still feel I had control. Because to me, it's not like something. But I have colleagues and I have friends where for them, writing just flows. For them, it's part of their feeling of what my creative identity is. And they feel scared about it because they feel like it can do stuff. And for me, it's like, I'm not a full-time musician anymore, but if I was, I would definitely feel a little bit frustrated by how it's so much easier for anyone to just make something that sounds like good music. But we all know that even people that are very good at creating stuff can't, with guarantee, make something that's good. So we all know how much effort it takes, even for me. I don't know how much Amiga music I have made, but I've made a lot, and a lot of it is available online. And if I listen to it, some of it is just, holy shit, I did that. That was really bad, Yeah. That's most of it. But then there's maybe 10 of my tracks where I go like, yeah, I'm still proud of it. I'm really proud of that. But I'd had to do so many things, many tracks before and some of it I was like, why was that one the good one? Why was that one? I don't know. And sometimes it feels like the AI just fills up, because I'm also conscious about maybe not, because I just put all my Amiga music out there. But I've done a lot of game design stuff. Yeah. I'd mentioned 2 games, right? But I've designed maybe 20 games that I haven't released or that aren't released. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is because publishers didn't sign them, but some of it is maybe also when I look at them and I'm honest, maybe that wasn't that good. So maybe there was a good reason for it, because it's okay that I enjoyed the process, but maybe it was okay that it wasn't like pushed into the face of people and asked them to pay for it. And I think this is one of the situations we're in right now, is where AI is just basically mass producing, helping people to mass produce all kinds of experiments. But some people don't have the filter or the understanding, and maybe they don't need to have that, but they don't feel like it because they're hobbyists. So all of this stuff is being pushed at us. So it's just like seeing all the stuff, also all the bad experiments that people do that you wouldn't see back, that you haven't seen all of my bad games. Or I've also done a lot of music that I did not show to anyone because I didn't think it was good enough. So that's the filter we are missing, I think. So that's part of the frustration. I'm hopeful that it will eventually land in a place where we have this new feeling of not being scared of the stuff that AI does, not being frustrated that it's taking our jobs, but actually that is now in a position where it's a natural tool for us to use, and we can still respect creations that you did or I did as something that you did or I did, even though we use the tools of AI.
Yeah.
but we're not right there right now. And there's a lot of uncertainty and fear, and so that's what it feels like right now.
What current limitation in hardware or software do you think will be solved next, if any?
Interface, the interaction with the computer, both in terms of, and we're already seeing that. I've been in with Unity. When I was running Unity, we were partially doing games, but we were also experimenting with all the new technologies at one point, because that was one of the frontiers of Unity as well. We could start doing the first versions of VR and AR headsets and haptic feedback and all that stuff. And it just felt natural for me because, remember back in the day, we didn't use the Amiga back in the day because it was retro or cool. We used it partially because it was the best, newest technology.
Exactly.
Today, of course, we use it because it's fun to work within those limitations and so on. But the thing that a lot of the people from those days still strive to is, this is new, interesting stuff. Now you have there's this funny little computer, the Arduino, and you can code your own. So I still find that interesting. So I worked a lot with all these new input systems, and they've struggled along the way. And there's the enthusiasts always think that, VR is going to be the next new thing, but it's still not there. But now that we're starting to see people can talk to their computers and don't have to type, I think the next big step is that at one point I will be composing music without having to drag sliders or write numbers to update and change things. It's more like intuitively, and it's what is that it just sounds so science fiction. Do you remember the Minority Report movie? Where we saw one of the first examples of Tom Cruise standing there with like these transparent digital screens, and he would just drag things out of the air.
Exactly.
And that felt like sci-fi. And with VR and AR, you can do that now. It's just too expensive. It's not mass produced, but I think we're moving in that direction. And just like and we are, in music creation, we're seeing all these like loop machines and tools that make it much more intuitive, and for especially people that more, back in the day, I was thinking the music, and it was a very thinking heavy process. Of course, when I started building the tracks and creating a beat, I would feel it as well. But it's almost like very, very old school composers that would be, like Mozart. I'm not comparing myself to Mozart, by the way. No. But those guys, Johann Sebastian Bach, they would compose in their head, maybe with a piano or something. But they would hear this, plan the stuff. So it's almost like a technical spreadsheet exercise, and that's the first digital music felt like that to some extent. And we're moving more and more into where digital music becomes more and more accessible. And I think that's what the new breakthrough. It's not a very. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a very specific thing that will happen, but let's say at one point mouse and keyboard will go away. But maybe not right away. But,
in the future.
Everyone's been dreaming about having a computer with you all along, and it's just happened so naturally that people don't think about how crazy revolutionary it was that you had this iPhone thing. And obviously we know it's revolutionary because it really was for everyone. But, I lived through it, and I worked in an industry that kind of, Unity was built on the success of the iPhone and the ability to build games using Unity on the iPhone. Unity just happened to be the first and best engine at the time that actually cared about building a game development environment that worked on a Mac computer. So that was the first kick for Unity to become big. And I think I think walking around with your computer all the time is just gonna be enhanced by reducing the physical aspects of interacting with it. And first you could touch the phone. Nowadays you can just talk to the phone. And I'm so old school, I don't do that.
No.
But when I see young kids, they just go like, "Hey Siri, can you give me the direction to something?" Or whatever
exactly.
they do. And that's going to be more widespread, I think.
But do you think it's very healthy in the long run? Especially for young minds?
No, yes, no. I don't think I think to some extent that every time there's some new fad, everyone has been overdoing and overreacting to the new thing. And there's a group of people that's been like, and I'd say a new group of people, usually a small group of people, but with this kind of technology and with the phone, it's everyone basically. So that's where the big problem is. But there is, I mean, the challenge is the interaction between people and social interactions and young brains. I saw a study about some people say that you shouldn't give a phone to someone who's younger than 13 because it's going to affect how their ability to interact socially is affecting their brain, because at that point, that's where, I don't know if I didn't read the study as such, but so there's definitely stuff in those areas that is problematic. And I guess, I don't know, you're a parent. Are you a parent? Yeah. So as parents, we obviously start thinking about those things. When I was a kid, I didn't think. I was just cool.
Yeah.
And that's what cool kids think. I mean, they are not aware that their brains are being conditioned based on what they do. They just do it. And as a parent, you are looking at your kid and you're suddenly thinking about what is affecting my kid. And so you are aware of it, but you don't actually know the science behind it unless you really read up on it.
Exactly.
And I think that's the challenge we have as humanity. How do we live through all this and manage it? And I guess it's a little bit like learning to find out how we can have these dangerous guns and still manage a society where people treat them properly. And I think I guess us in the Scandinavia, we think that America failed at solving that, and we think that we solved it in a good way. And I think there's a lot of stuff being done where politicians and communities and even like parents are still trying to sort out how we will eventually solve that. And maybe guns are a bad example, but cars can be dangerous, so we have rules for that. And I think in maybe 30 years, some of it will be solved with rules and restriction, because we now know and everyone accepts, and there's proof behind certain things with certain technologies are unhealthy for you. And I know it's difficult because we've had the same problem with sugar and fat in our food. And we're still trying to solve it. But I do think that, especially in our countries, and that's what I feel, because I also know more about the Nordics and Denmark than other countries. I think that we do have people that are overweight, but it's much less, and we are more aware of it. And the next generations are choosing more healthy living because previous generations experienced that it was a danger to our health. So I think, but it took us 30 years. And I think maybe we are in the same process with all of this new technology. And maybe we will have some generations that, just like overweight, and people died from being overweight and having there's going to be some generations where a larger amount of people have social problems because they grew up in a time when we got this new technology and we didn't know how to use it.
Exactly. But you mentioned cars, but in the future, how many people will actually be driving their own car? That's also a question.
I mean, I'm definitely, I saw this futuristic dream scenario or something where no cars would be self-driven. Everyone would it would just be like almost like a grid of cars, and then you would just go out on the street, and they would just drive by, and almost like mini buses, you would just jump in and you would just get out where you wanted. That is very futuristic. I think we're far away from that, but
but they do have driverless cars, and if there's one good thing about that, at least there will probably be less people driving drunk.
I mean, that's a very specific thing, but it's another good thing is, but it's another good thing, but also a challenge is obviously the climate thing. If all of these cars are communally owned or owned by, you rent a car or something, maybe it's easier if they are managed in this way to make sure all of the cars live up to all these restrictions and have better climate, so on. That might be easier, but then another, it's not easy to get to that point, because on the way to that point, we are going to have to change how we live and how our financial setup is, and what is a big priority to us in terms of having a car, especially in American culture, but in many cultures has been a big identifier for success, and it's a big goal in life to have a house and a car and a dog and so on. And suddenly, if it's not, then what then do you do, and what do you spend your money on, and so on? And I think all of that is just like any other thing we've done with humanity. It's just going to sort itself out.
We will see. But a lot of younger people are opting out of the family life. They would rather have a career and earn a lot of money and travel,
and it's like anything else. Whenever something new happens, there is always a pain of no longer doing the old stuff, and there's a pain and a fear, and it might be rightly so, it might be over worrying that because we are no longer doing it the old way, then we are losing stuff, and there's a sadness and a fear that is bad. But because we don't know if the new stuff is really good or not, because we don't have the scientific evidence yet, there is always this fear that maybe we should just not do the new stuff and just do the stuff we know that works. And sometimes you realize some of the new stuff is bad, like we've realized that just doom scrolling is not healthy for a teenage mind, or just comparing yourself all the time with the images you see online can create this body dysmorphia thing and all that stuff. But there's also a lot of good stuff with knowledge sharing and learning from others, and building international networks, and having contact with people that are far away from you, and being creatively inspired. So it's unfortunately it's very painful to go through that change, right?
Okay, now we've been rambling on for quite some time here. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think because I'm divorced, it would be about maybe not get so caught up in your own projects, maybe be better at spending time with your family. I mean, it's because that's maybe one of the things that were the hardest process in my life, was figuring out how painful it was to go through that, and how does that affect my kids and all that stuff. And it's also something that is affecting me more long term, right? Because it's an emotional side, where even if it's a project. So, and maybe the second thing was, and it relates a little bit to that, it was just sometimes just learn to say, oh, never mind, or we say in Denmark, we say pyt, or don't worry about it. And maybe this especially related to some of the whenever you do a project, and even way back, because my mind works like that. When I do something, I get 110% into it, which means I sometimes forget the rest of the stuff. And sometimes that hurt my family, because maybe I haven't OCD or whatever. I don't know. I don't have any diagnose, but there's part of me that just gets so absorbed, and it feels like this is the most important thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever I did some of my first games, it felt like this is going to make me world famous.
Mm-hmm.
Or doing music, there was always this dream of becoming, you know, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it also meant that if it didn't go well, or if I was struggling with it, because it felt like it was the most important thing in the world, it would feel more catastrophic.
Yeah.
And that would make me frustrated, or it would be the key to having this imposter syndrome of not being good enough, because I always put things on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. So as you get older, and what I would like to say, I'm not sure my younger self would have listened to it, but I would basically say, hey, it's just a piece of music. It's not,
mm-hmm.
it's not your kids, or it's not
mm-hmm.
the most important thing in the world.
Exactly.
So I don't know if I would have listened to it, or if I would be able to. But,
no, but still. Yeah. Is there anything I have forgotten to ask you about that I should have?
No, I don't think so.
Is there anything you would like to add?
I would actually, I don't know. I think maybe I should pull myself together and go to a demo party at one point in the next couple of years.
It is still fun, but unlike previous times when people were pretty drunk, most people are more or less behaving now.
Yeah, I guess we all still. You know, I don't know everyone, but you know, I do like a good beer. But
sure.
It's changed from the student days of finding the cheapest beers, because then you could get many, and then you get drunk, to actually maybe only drinking one or two, but finding some that are special beers or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, you know, actually, it's short. I did not a party, but you know, there's this Norwegian band called the Fast Loaders, or they do this cover tracks and like metal, like symphonic metal. And I did go to a concert in Bergen at one point. It wasn't a demo party, but everyone there was like nerds. And there was like a music competition. I remember there was a couple of other demo musicians there, and we hung out. So that was pretty cool. So stuff like that is still fun. No, in terms of what you forgot to ask, I don't know. We've got around a lot of stuff, so I think it's.
I think I have all my bases covered, so to say. But if there is anything you can think of that people would like to hear, feel free to say it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very interested in my new board game, hopefully being received very well.
Of course.
And so if anyone who's listening is curious about board games, I obviously hope that they would go and check that out. It's called Revenant. So that's very much at the front of my mind right now. So I guess that's it.
Any shout outs or greetings you'd like to send to old Demoscene friends, or?
I think so. No, I'm always very bad at remembering all the names and the handles and so on. But I have a bunch of guys from those days that I still talk to in Denmark. So shout out to them, and of course Dice, who I started with, and so on. I don't think he will see this, because it's not everyone who's still.
You never know.
Yeah. No, but I'm really bad at all the shout out stuff. I remember when I had to write scroll text and so on. And I'm like, what should I? Who is it that I know? And I know them as Karsten, or like their real names. And I forget nowadays. I forget what their handles were.
Okay, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this. We have been rambling on for nearing 2 hours almost. So
good luck with editing then. I don't know, or maybe you're just. I also did podcast at one time, and I basically just did a take, and unless there was something really bad, I would just post it as it was, more or less.
We will see. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.